We are recording the interview of Charles F. Fox Jr. This interview is being conducted by Jeremy Tkach from the Wright State University's Veteran Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in the Veterans and Military Center. It is 3:45 p.m. on the 12th of July, 2018. Charlie, thank you for being here. I'm happy to do this interview. So let's get started with when and where were you born?
I was born in 1944, October the 25th, in Henderson, Kentucky.
Who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My mother was Eloise. She was a homemaker. And my father's named Charles. He was a carpenter.
Do you have any siblings?
Yes. I had two older sisters and a younger brother.
Do you have any other family members, siblings, parents, aunts, uncles, grandparents that served in the military?
I had an uncle that served 21 years in the Navy.
Okay. What did he do in the Navy?
He was a sonar technician
Oh, really?
and a fire suppressor technician. He was in World War II.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was he sonar tech on subs or was he surface?
Pardon?
Was he on subs or was
No,
he
surface ships.
Surface, okay. I was in the Navy, so.
Well, I won't hold it against you. I tested out of the Navy. I'm just joking.
No, I ended up joining.
Thank you for your service.
I joined the Air Force later. I'm technically still in the reserves, but I'm being medically discharged now. So, so I got smart, as my dad calls it, because my dad was a Air Force vet. All right. So when did you join the Air Force?
I joined the Air Force in February the 19th, 1963, a year following graduation from high school.
Okay, and what led to that decision?
Not having a job, and I had an automobile that I couldn't afford the payments on, and I went to the Air Force recruiter. Someone told me that he was looking for an automobile to buy, and I went there to sell him my car, and it was about 45 minutes later I left on the bus to go to the induction center in the Air Force.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, what did your parents think when you joined the Air Force?
Well, my parents were divorced. My mother was working at the time as a secretary, and I called her and told her that I was leaving that evening before she got off from work, and that I didn't know when I'd see her again. So it was 3 months later when I saw her.
Wow.
So it was a shock.
Tell me about basic training. What was that like?
No, nothing to it. Simple. Just keep your mouth shut and do what they tell you.
And was that down at Lackland?
Is that Lackland? Yes.
Do you have any instructors or drill sergeants that stand out to you that you remember today?
No, not really. They were all frightening and kept you in line, and that's what they were supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. What about the feeling when you graduated? What was that like?
From basic?
Mm-hmm.
It was no big deal. I mean, I was just with other people, so yeah, I was glad to get it over with, to go to an assignment.
So what was your assignment? What was your job?
Well, they ranked you academically in basic, and those of us that wanted to go overseas were brought into a room, and the assignments were written on a chalkboard, and we got to choose by academic standing where we wanted to go. And fortunately, I got to choose my assignment, which was Simbach, Germany.
And why'd you pick that?
I just wanted to go overseas. I just wanted to travel and see the world, see the country, see what life was like outside the United States.
So what did you do in Germany?
I was a medical technician that worked in the emergency room.
Okay. Did you go to school prior?
Yeah, prior to that, I went to a little school in Mississippi, and then I went to a school at Gunter in Alabama.
How long were those schools?
I think the one in Mississippi was about 3 weeks, and the one at Gunter was about 5 weeks.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about what daily life was like in Germany. What was your job duties?
I worked in the emergency room. Basically, it was a small 30-bed hospital, and we had a day shift that took care of everything from 7 o'clock until about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I was assigned to an E5 NCO, and we came in, and the two of us, I was probably a two-striper, an E3, and we kept the emergency room open for the 18 hours till the day shift came on.
Mhm.
And if it happened to fall on a Saturday, a Sunday, or a holiday, then we worked 24 hours.
Do you have any crazy stories or anything from working in an emergency room?
Well, it was a rewarding experience. It was a frightening experience also, because we sat around. There was the times when nothing was going on, and there was no television, no radio, and all we did was clean. And once we got the area cleaned, the hospital cleaned, and everything done, the orders were typed up. Any patient came in, we had a medical doctor that was on call. Basically, he had worked that day, so he was back in his quarters, and we would wake him up if we had a patient, and he would come out. And so just sitting around at night at 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden the phone rang, and it's rings on the red phone, and it's a little frightening to know what's going to come up, especially if you're just a young kid and you've had so little training, you don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. How long were you in Germany?
3 years.
3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Was there any life-changing events or anything?
I'm sorry?
Was there any life-changing events in Germany?
No, I grew up in Germany.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just a young kid, and thank God some of the older enlisted men took me under their wings and kept me straight and instilled a lot of confidence in me that I didn't have in myself, and I matured a lot.
So you're probably pretty familiar with German culture by then.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I knew how to order a beer in a guest house.
The important stuff.
That was about it after 3 years. Go to the bathroom.
On that note, what'd you do for fun? Is there any leisure activities?
Well, 1963 to 1966 is when I served in Germany. And as the young enlisted man, you didn't get a lot of money. In fact, I remember saluting the paymaster and getting two $20 bills and some change for the month. And so I really didn't have the money to travel a lot. And I was there for over 2 years before I went on my first leave. And I went to Amsterdam on a train. And then later on, I got to go to Paris. And that was it. That was about all I saw of Europe.
Those are two great places, though.
Yeah.
I'm sure you had fun there. What was your next assignment after Germany?
When I left Germany, I went to Pope, North Carolina.
Okay.
And then I was in an aeromedical evacuation squadron. Okay. So I had to go to school at Brooks Air Force Base for 5 weeks and for aeromedical evacuation technician training. And then I came back and I was on flying status.
Okay. What aircraft were you flying in?
C-130.
C-130, okay. So what was basically the job?
Well, it was a tactical unit. So we basically worked out of a warehouse, and each day we would come in and unroll tents, check them, make sure they were okay, roll them back up, put them back where we got them. We'd open up our medical kits and inventory, make sure that the medication or the IV solutions weren't expired, and put them back, and just actually was waiting around and for the call to go to war or whatever emergency event, then we would go. But we never got called while I was there, except we were mobilized to go to Vietnam.
Okay. Yeah, and then Vietnam was heating up around this time.
Yes.
So what was that feeling like?
Well, I remember we were on an exercise in the field, and the commander called us together and said that our unit was going to be paired with our sister unit in Seward in Tennessee, and we were going to be mobilized and going to Vietnam. So I didn't have but 4 months left on my enlistment, and so I went to personnel and extended my enlistment to give me enough time to go with my unit to go to Vietnam.
Wow. So what do you stayed in? You chose to stay in after that, your first enlistment?
I'm sorry?
You chose to stay in after that first enlistment?
Well, I extended my enlistment, and so I had a 10-month tour of duty before I was going to be let go of the military. And but when I got into Vietnam, I made E5, and I decided I wanted to re-enlist. So I re-enlisted in Vietnam.
That's usually the hump for people is E5.
Yeah.
When did you arrive in Vietnam?
In March 1967.
Okay. And what did you think when you arrived there?
Just another assignment.
Another assignment?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, when you're with other people and you bond with other people, you just, no matter what happens, you're with friends, you're with your people. The military, the government was paying me a salary to be in the military, and whatever duty they told me to perform, I performed it.
And you went over there with the same people that you were with back home.
Yeah, that's Pope. Mm-hmm.
That's very unique for people in Vietnam, because they were usually sent one there, one back, and you meet a whole new guys there.
Yeah, we were about 60 people.
Mm-hmm. So what was the mission in Vietnam?
Well, what we did, we arrived in March, and we were put in a barracks with no roof, and it was a monsoon season, so we got wet for a few nights before we finally got a roof over our heads. We found out we really didn't have a mission. We were there before anybody knew what we were supposed to do. And at about a month of filling sandbags and volunteering to work in the hospitals at different places, we were at Da Nang and then we were at Cam Ranh Bay, helping those people. Then we did have a mission that came down, and we were broken up into units of 12. There was about 10 technicians with a radio operator and an NCOIC, enlisted man. And we deployed and set up a tent out in the field with the Army and the Marines. And then the battle casualties were brought from the field by medevac to the rear battalion for treatment. If they were more serious than they could handle in the field, then they told us, so we called in the fixed-wing aircraft, and we airvac the patient back to the larger facilities. And we had no nurses, no doctors, just listed medical technicians with very little training and very little equipment.
I'm sure that made it pretty difficult.
Yeah, well, you did your best.
Did
You did what you had to do.
Did you see a lot of casualties come through?
Pardon?
Did you see a lot of casualties come through?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Did you, while in Vietnam, you were the flying unit? Did you go places, or were you just basically pretty much stationary?
Well, what we would do, we would stay, let's say that they would send us to Da Nang, which is a Marine base. And we would set up a tent, the 12 of us, next to the Marine aid station. After 30 days, we would rotate and we'd go someplace else, perhaps to an Army post. And so that's what we did for that year. We would just rotate to different places. And that's, we didn't stay at one place all the time.
And you said you were there for 10 months?
I was there for 10 months because it was the quirk in the system, the personnel system. I thought once I re-enlisted in country, then I would serve up my year with my unit. And I was out in the field with an Army unit, and I was called and told that I was leaving Vietnam in 2 days, and couldn't understand why, but it did not change. Me re-enlisted did not change my date of rotation. So I actually left 2 months before my unit rotated back.
Interesting. Was there anything you did for leisure or for fun in Vietnam?
Well, we drank and we played cards.
Did you write home at all?
Not much, no. No, I did tear off some C ration boxes, and you could write on there, and then you just write up in the corner where the post office, where the stamp was supposed to go, you'd write Republic of Vietnam, and you could mail that. So I sent those to a lot of the guys that I knew back home that did not go in the military.
What about your family? Did your mom, have any thoughts about you going to Vietnam?
Well, not really. I suppose I guess she was proud in a way, but frightened in other ways. But it was the time when a lot of protesting was going on. A lot of people wanted out of the military, not in the military. And it was sort of a quirk, and that here I was turning down a discharge and volunteering to go. And that was hard for her to understand. Why would I do that? But anyway, she understood.
Yeah, 'cause conscription was going on by this time, wasn't it?
Yeah, the draft was going on.
So, while in Vietnam, 10 months, did you see any combat while you were there?
Well, we were under attack,
Mm-hmm.
rocket attack and mortar attack quite often.
Okay.
And
So
we were shot at
yeah.
from the ground when we
Mhm.
were air evacuating patients.
Okay. What was that like? Was it scary, or was it just like, hey, that's
Well, I happened to be on a flight with a nurse from one of the other organizations. He wasn't with one of our organizations, and he told me when we got on the plane, he said, if something happens to this plane, he said, I'll tell you, and I want you to run back there to that bag and bring me my red flight suit out of that bag. And I said, what for?
mm-hmm.
He said, well, if something happens and I get hit and I start bleeding, I don't want to frighten anybody,
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. So we got airborne, and all of a sudden the plane went one way and then went the other way, and then we went up and then we went down. And he yelled at me, and I said, okay, I'll get your red flight suit. He said, forget the red flight suit. Bring me my brown pants. That was a joke. That didn't happen.
I like it.
I had to tell an officer story.
That was good. So, leaving Vietnam, what was that feeling like?
I was glad it was over. I was disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't want to go because my unit was still there.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess somebody was looking out for me because the Tet Offensive occurred,
Mm-hmm.
In January and February of '68, and
Mm-hmm.
I was not there, and
Mm-hmm.
I hated that. It really upset me that I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there with them.
Were you met with any resistance when you got home? Was there any protesters or?
I can't say that I was personally attacked or insulted, but there was an aura about Vietnam veterans returning, and there was a lot of comments made. We were not encouraged to wear our uniform off the base, and sad situation, but let's put up with it.
Mm-hmm. What was so your unit was still there. You were home, and at this point in time, you decided to stay in. What led to that decision?
Well, I re-enlisted in Vietnam, and
okay.
so I came back. I came back to Scott Air Force Base.
Okay.
By that time, I was a career
Okay,
person.
that's right. Because you
And
said
so
you
a
made
lot,
it sergeant,
a lot of the guys that were in Vietnam and rotated back in March of '68, many of those guys came to my unit at Scott.
Okay.
And some of them went to other aerovac organizations. But a lot of my close friends, most of those guys got out of the military. They were just first-term airmen. They did not stay in.
Okay, so you were assigned to Scott Air Force Base.
I went to Scott.
And what was your
Aerovac.
Aerovac?
I was an aerovac technician. Okay. Yes, we moved patients, a lot of VA patients. We moved from different places all around the country.
And was that on C-130s as well? Or?
Well, when I first got there, it was a C-131 and a C-118, and we transitioned into the C-9.
Okay. And how long were you there?
2 years.
Okay. What'd you think of Scott?
Oh, I like Scott. I met my wife there.
Okay,
So it was a good assignment.
I love Scott Air Force Base. I love St. Louis. It's a great city.
Oh yeah, it was a small base when I was there, though. Really small.
Yeah, it's pretty big now.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The commissary and the exchange there is.
Yeah. I was there in '68, '69.
Yeah.
Pretty small.
And so what was the next assignment after that?
My next assignment I chose was, I went to Yokota.
Okay. And
Japan.
that's Japan? Okay.
And I flew the C-130s, again, aerovac. And fortunately, we got to fly in country. And so I got a lot more combat time, Vietnam time, with that unit. In fact,
so
3 years worth.
To Vietnam. Okay. Yeah, what was it like going back then?
Well, it was really nothing to it. You know, we just fly in and pick up our patients and load them and bring them back to Yokota. And then once we brought them back to Yokota, they would remain overnight in some of the medical facilities. And then we also would take them on C-141s back into Travis through the United States, drop them off at various points, or we would take them into to Alaska at Elmendorf.
Okay, so that's a lot of flying.
Yeah, a lot of flying. Yes, that's what I did for 3 years. I was gone. We had to pack a bag, and once we were put on a flight, we knew where we were going, but we didn't know when we were coming back.
Okay.
Because we were subject to be taken off. I could have gotten off at Scott. I could have flown from Yokota to Travis, gone into crew rest, taken another 141 that came in the day before, and pick it up and take it in to Scott, and then into McGuire, and then to New Jersey, and then work our way back to Elmendorf, and then back home. But we were subject to be taken off the plane at any time and put on another mission.
Wow. How long was the flight from Yokota to Vietnam?
It was about, 3.5, 4 hours.
Okay.
I'm not certain on that. That's a long time ago.
Did you stop anywhere on the way there, or was it just a direct flight?
No, but some of those flights, we didn't go directly from Yokota, from Japan into Vietnam. Some of those flights we would go from Yokota into Clark in the Philippines. And we'd stay overnight, and then we would crew a mission from Clark into Vietnam back to Yokota.
Okay. So it was just direct from Vietnam to Yokota. Okay. And you did that for 3 years?
Yes.
Did you have much time off? It sounds like you had a high output.
Well, I was married, and by that time we had a child, and 2 children by then, excuse me. And again, I was gone a lot, didn't make a lot of money, so there wasn't a lot of vacations, but we did see a little bit of Japan, but not a lot.
And your wife was able, and your kids were able to come to Japan
Yes.
with you? Okay, well, that's good. Did they have a good time there?
I think they did. It's a great experience. Yeah.
I was in Japan for 2 years. I was in Sasebo, so south, but yeah, it was a great place. So after Japan, where'd you go?
Well, after Japan, I went to Brooks Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
And what'd you do there?
I was an instructor of the School of Aerospace Medicine.
Okay.
And I was there for 4 years.
Wow.
I was an instructor, the course supervisor, and then I left and I went to Fort Yukon, Alaska as an independent site medic for 105 people. And then I came back to Brooks as the superintendent of the branch for 3 more years.
Okay. So what was it like being an instructor?
It was rewarding. It was a good job. It was a good job.
And that by that time, what rank had you made?
Well, I made Master Sergeant in my first assignment at Brooks, and I left and I went to, as I say, I went to Fort Yukon, Alaska, and I came back to Brooks and I made E8, Senior Master there.
And so you went from Brooks to Alaska and then back, and then after that,
After that, I went to a black area in Nevada.
Okay. Awesome. I have tons of questions now.
I can't answer them. Ask away. There's going to be a lot of silence on the camera.
How long were you there?
3 years.
3 years, okay.
Yeah.
What can you tell me?
Well, I can tell you that we flew into a location and we had physicians and we had a couple of physician assistants and some airvac technicians, and we had a medical facility and we took care of people.
Okay. Where did you live during that time? In Nevada? Or?
I lived in Las Vegas.
Las Vegas. And then probably flew from Vegas to there. Was it on a daily basis? Or?
Yeah, I didn't walk.
But would you have to fly in and fly out on a daily basis, or would you stay a few days and then?
It was a rotational basis. We had to staff the facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 24/7.
Okay.
And so we had a day shift, and then we would pair up. We had a schedule where a technician and a physician, or a technician and a physician assistant would staff the facility in the evenings and wait for the other people to come back.
Okay. Man, that's really cool. Trying to think what I could ask, but I just don't know.
I can tell you I was on flying status also. So.
Okay. Did you get a chance to do a lot of flying, or?
No, not a lot. Not a lot.
Okay. Cool. All right. I'm so intrigued. That's awesome. After that, what was?
I retired.
You retired. You retired from there. That topped it off for you.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. Yeah, but by that time I was a chief master sergeant, and I just wanted to do something else. I wanted to, honestly, I wanted to get out and just start at the bottom in another field and do something and just work my way up again.
And so you were in what,
21 years.
21 years. Wow. So you made chief pretty quick then.
Yeah, I did. I was fortunate. I had a lot of special duty assignments and come time promotion, that it made a difference when I was competing with my peers.
What was the feeling like pinning on chief?
Well, I really don't know because I only wore my uniform one time because in the location that I was serving in at the time, we wore civilian clothes. So and out there it was a first name basis, regardless of what your rank. You put aside the rank, you were there to do the best. You were brought there because of your knowledge and your past experience, and you couldn't tell a contractor from a military person, and nobody really cared. But I didn't get. I made chief, but I didn't. I think one time I had to go to personnel when I put my retirement papers in. I had to go in to Nellis at the Air Force Base, and I wore my uniform. Now I got a lot of stares because I really looked pretty young. You can't tell it today, but I was a pretty young-looking chief, and I got accosted a couple of times wanting to know what was I doing wearing a uniform. So it was sort of funny. I tried to kick me out of a parking lot for a chief master sergeant one time on a base.
My chief just retired. He was 39. He just actually he's on terminal leave right now, so he retires next month. But so he was pretty young too.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool. And it's a definite milestone to make. But you had a unique experience since you didn't have to. You didn't really.
I love the military. I was a 30-year man, but the kind of assignments I had, I was looking to go behind a desk somewhere to be a staff person, administrator, and I'm not that kind of person. I'm a hands-on person. I want to work.
So after your retirement, what did you end up doing?
Well, I went back to my hometown. I had a small farm, about 40 acres, and I took the test for rural carrier, and or the post office, and was hired as a city carrier. And after 2 years, I took the rural carrier's test and converted over to a rural carrier, and I stayed in the post office for 21 more years.
Wow. Did you enjoy that? I imagine you did.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I did. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed coming into the post office. It was a disastrous organization, but I loved because I had independence. I came in, I put my mail up, and I left in my own personal vehicle, and I delivered the mail and took care of my customers. And there's a lot of rewarding experiences there.
Awesome. And then when you retired from that was?
I became a professional grandfather.
Awesome. And then I know your son-in-law was in the military.
Yes, he's a retired full colonel, special duty operations pilot. And my daughter is a hospital commander at Wright. She's a full colonel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, okay. She has 27 years in.
Okay, great. Well, when she retires, we'd love to have her in and
yeah, I'm surprised she hasn't been here already.
Great.
And my wife is an Air Force veteran too.
Oh, shoot, really? Okay. What did she do?
She was communications.
Okay.
I met her at Scott.
That's right.
And
How long did she stay in?
she was only in for 2 years.
Okay.
Because we got married, and at that time, if you're a female and you got pregnant, of course you had to be a female to get pregnant, but anyway, you had to get out.
Uh-huh. Yeah, different times. But then the whole military life is probably, she was a little bit more understanding than someone else then.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that was...
It's not like it used to be.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to tell you that I agree with it.
Well, that's a fascinating career, especially that last assignment. Which
I see you didn't even notice my note on there. It was about if I was a prisoner of war.
No, but have been. Well, congratulations on 50 years.
Thank you.
I like that. That's great. Let's see where we're at with time. Okay, we're right about 30 minutes. Is there any message you would like to leave for future generations that might be viewing this interview?
Well, the message I want you to leave for future generations. Well, you need to love your country and thank God you're an American. That's for one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I don't know if I have a great appreciation for our people today, or I have very little respect. I think our generation today have really had a con job pulled on them.
Mm-hmm.
They've been taught to hate their country. They've been taught everything bad about our country, and it's a sad situation because they're buying it.
Mm-hmm.
When we would destroy this country, what's going to happen to all the other countries?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to live? Who's going to help them? Who's going to fight their wars? Who's going to feed them?
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to give them the medical service, the attention they need? So there's great opportunity, and what's going on today about hating the America and disrespecting America. It's a great time to be old.
Mm-hmm. Well, Charlie, thank you very much. Those are great words. Great career. Love talking with you. So, one last question. I'm just gonna get it on tape. Do aliens exist?
Pardon?
Do aliens exist?
Well, if they are, they're not talking.
All right. Thank you so much. This concludes the interview of Charles F. Fox Jr. Thanks.
Thank
you
you
for your
John.
service.